At around 7 a.m. on January the 20th, 2016, a call was made to 911 to report seeing someone lying on the ground outside a small neighborhood in Milton, Florida, at the corner of Palomino Avenue and Morgan Road. The caller used an untraceable track phone and remained anonymous. The call was reported as a medical emergency. When deputies arrived, they found 29-year-old Brandy Maples outside on the ground and lifeless, with multiple gunshot wounds to the head, where she was pronounced dead. It is believed she was walking home during the early morning hours of January 20th when she was gunned down in the street sometime between midnight and 7 a.m. Neighbors said around midnight they heard gunshots and reported this to the police, whose patrol cars began lining the streets the next morning. However, the police did not attribute the two to be one and the same. They believed each were separate events and not the shots that were fired that killed Maples. That particular neighborhood and its residents claimed it was normal to hear the sound of gunshots from time to time, but the fact is, someone did shoot Maples, and since those shots were heard in the time frame she could have been killed, wouldn't it be safe to say those gunshots could have been the same ones heard by neighbors that caused her death? And what about that untraceable call the next morning? Could he have been the killer? If neighbors heard the shots at midnight and Brandy was found outside the next day with multiple shots to her head, then those could have been the ones that killed her. Since there is a time frame narrowed down from midnight until 7 a.m., of course that would give the perpetrator plenty of time to leave the scene and go into hiding. The fact that an anonymous person was the one to call 911 suggests to me that she knew her killer, and that he or she, for reasons unknown, however this happens in these types of cases when someone kills someone they know, decided to call it in. Plus, no one in the neighborhood heard any screams, so to me, she was encountering someone she knew, and they most likely killed her without her even knowing it was coming, most likely utilizing the element of surprise. Officer Rich Alloy doesn't believe this was a random attack. He believes Brandy was walking through the neighborhood when she encountered someone she knew or acquainted with that killed her. Neighbors were upset to hear of her murder, but they were not surprised, claiming the neighborhood had changed in past years and not for the better. One neighbor explained that he heard 4 shots that night, which prompted him to call the sheriff's department, but because it was dark outside, nothing was found until the next morning when somebody in the neighborhood located the body. It has been nearly 5 years and law enforcement still have no leads, as it remains a cold case, and Brandy's family still has no answers of why or who killed the mother of 2 children. One neighbor said that she was a nice person who would always say hello when passing by. He also went on to say he had given her a ride on occasion and that she lived around the corner. As time went on, investigators exhausted their leads.
A quiet night in this neighborhood was shattered 4 years ago with the sound of gunfire.
About 11 o'clock, I think, one night we heard 4 shots, came outside and had to call the sheriff's department. Nobody found anything that night. The next morning, somebody located the body.
Santa Rosa County officers responded around 7 in the morning on January 20th, 2016.
We actually responded as a medical emergency because the person was found on the side of the road. And one of our investigators happened to be right there in the vicinity of the location. He arrived on scene, and it was pretty obvious that it was a person that was deceased.
We're right off of Morgan Road and Palomino Avenue in Milton, and this area right here is where her body was found. Alloy says that when they arrived on scene, it became apparent to them that she may have just been walking down this road, but she was found with multiple gunshot wounds throughout her body.
This wasn't a random attack. You know, that's one thing is it wasn't a random attack. This individual was known. We believe she knew who her attacker was. We believe that they were either an acquaintance or she knew exactly who this person was.
Brandy Christine Maples was 29 years old at the time and a mother to 2 children. Family, friends, and neighbors made this memorial for her.
She seemed like a nice girl to me. She always spoke, said hi when she went by, and I said hi back. I'd given her a ride a couple times, and that's about all I knew about her. She lived around the corner here.
Alloy says they've exhausted their leads.
Every person we spoke to had a different story. Everything was situational. Everyone had a different opinion of what happened. I could tell you there were over a half a dozen suspects that were interviewed. Dozens of witnesses were interviewed. There was a lot of people that were spoken to by our major crimes unit. It went on and on and on. And with all of that information, it still is a cold case.
But it's a cold case the agency refuses to give up on. A reward of up to $5,000 is still on the table for anyone who knows who murdered Maples.
You know, somebody out there knows something. And this is the type of case the closure is necessary by somebody that may have a little bit of information. And just like any other case, you're going to have, it's like a puzzle. Somebody has a little bit here, somebody's got a little bit there, and you really don't know that they may have it.
If you have the smallest bit of information regarding this case, you are urged to contact the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office. In Santa Rosa County, Amber Spradley, News 13, Panhandle Strong.
It's been 5 years since Maples was killed and no suspects, making this a cold case that her family and friends desperately seek answers so they can make the person responsible pay for their crime. They remain relentless in their efforts to help solve this case, using a variety of means one could use to tip off law enforcement and point them in the right direction. To find the person who did this evil act, try him in a court of law, and make him pay the highest cost possible for justice to prevail, and hopefully bring the family some peace. They can never ever bring Brandy back. That's what murder does. It doesn't just kill the victim, it kills the family structure, causing a huge void that rips away a part of the spirit this family once had as a whole. You never get that back, especially families who lose loved ones by murder where the case goes cold for years. But it's a case no one is giving up on, especially not her family, and law enforcement agencies claim the case will remain an open investigation. Brandy's sister created a Facebook page called Justice for Brandy Maples. Here you can familiarize yourself about Brandy, keep up with the latest updates about the case, and even possibly bring call to action and help bring Brandy's killer to justice. She also uses this social media platform to educate and advocate for the other crime crisis situations, to help find missing and endangered people, and to leave contact information as a tool to help law enforcement find missing people or solve cold case murders like Brandy's.
Marble Village is where she was walking to go home. She walked right down this street past this sign all the way to the end until to Palomino and Morgan Streets. And at that point, somebody at night, late at night, shot her in the head. And she was found the next day by neighbors at about 7 a.m. outside. If you notice in the news clips, you'll see that water tower in the background, and this is the street where you see where the police were and had it roped off. And we are again coming up on this area where she was murdered. Palomino Drive in Morgan. So somewhere in this area is where her body was found, with a gunshot wound to the head.